Do you ever see motocross going from, say, that 33,000, or MA in general, or motocross, from that 33,000 to 40 to 50 to 60,000 members?
Oh, look, you do. I think we have limitations as a country. It's not just linked to us getting members and events and stronger events. It's also our population. I think if you look at per head of capita, there's always a metric somewhere.
I think it's 0.5% of people ride motorbikes.
Yeah.
And then like a smaller percentage of them race.
Yeah. Correct. So the biggest potential growth for MA is, I think, off-road. I think off-road is an untapped discipline. I think there's a lot of activity that goes on that is not under the MA umbrella, mainly in recreational space, big trail rides and enduro runs. And I think there's a lot of potential in off-road. Australia produces quality off-road enduro riders. Clearly our terrain's got something to do with that and some of the events they run down here. But I think there's potential there. But in the end, we are only 25 million people across a continent as big as America, bigger than Europe. And I think per head of capita, we bat well above our average.
We do, yeah.
In all disciplines. It's also to our detriment, and I have to add this comment in here. People talk about the cost of the sport. And I spoke to a guy who's an Aussie guy in England, who's got his kid in the British Superbike Championship, having a chat to him, and we were having a general debate about the cost of racing in Australia. And I said, listen, I'll give you a little exercise to do. I said, I want you to tell me how much your budget was on rental cars and airfares last year for the British Superbike Championship. He went quiet and he came back and he said 0. I said, that's right. He said, because you can live almost anywhere in England and drive to every track in 4 or 5 hours.
It's all close, yeah.
Right? There's no airfares. It's close. England's the size of Victoria.
Yeah.
Right? So
you forget that, don't you?
So imagine if we had 80 million people in Victoria, how strong motocross would be.
Yeah.
Right? And how cheap it would be to go racing, and how the competition between events and tracks, how the facilities would compete against each other to be the best facility.
Demand and supply, yeah.
We are so big that we start putting events on, and if we want, and I'll use motocross, we want CDR Yamaha to go to Perth next year and do a Pro MX round in Perth. Well, as soon as we put it on, we've just cost CDR Yamaha 20 grand just to put the event on. Yep. To start his truck up and drive his truck over and fly part of his crew over. Not all of it. I would suggest to you it's a $30,000 exercise with the cost of doing business in Australia.
Yeah, and that's just one team, then you've got multiple.
Yeah, he's got, there's 2 riders and there's 6 staff. So there's 8 people, airfares, travel, accommodation, and a semi that starts in Melbourne and spends 8 days driving and another 3 or 4 days at the racetrack. Think of the cost.
It is very high cost. Do you think that could ever change, as in, like, we've always got to have the semis and whatnot, but it is a big operation for 8 weekends out of a 12-month calendar. Yep. Do you think the cost could ever be brought down a little bit to...
Do we bring the number of events up? Do we bring the cost down? I mean, those costs are beyond our control.
Yeah.
They're controlled by the retail sector.
Yep.
But it's directly a geography problem that we have in Australia that a lot of people don't consider.
Yeah.
Now, America has the same problem.
It's a classic, the old release the calendar, why is it only on the East Coast? And it's, there's only so much money. You can't, yeah.
Well, it is, but we need to go to Western Australia. We need to go to Darwin. We need to go to Tasmania.
Will we be in the future?
Oh, undoubtedly. They will be on the calendar.
Yep.
But the cost of putting on events also change with the requirement or the request or let's say the expectation of industry of getting value for money and wanting a live TV program, which motocross has never had in this country. So it's now got a live free-to-air program. You're talking $60,000, $70,000 a round on the East Coast. Start getting your production company to buck up and go to Western Australia and Tasmania.
Yeah.
And you don't get...
Gotta start somewhere.
So what you've got to do in this day and age is people have got to get off their backside and go to state government, go to LGAs and say, we want to bring the national motocross to our track, right? We want to work with the national body, we want to work with Pro MX, and we want the event to turn up here, and the economic impact of that event is going to be, just so you're aware, the average economic impact for a Pro MX round for the local area is between $1.5 and $2 million for a 2-day event.
And that's in like accommodations, foods, just all the...
So the Pro MX paddock now is around, on a Saturday afternoon, is around 800 people. That's not spectator, that's the paddock. That's the working group. That's riders, family, friends, mechanics, managers, sponsors. It's 800 people in that little circus.
And what they're all spending like $500 to $1,000?
And that's no spectators involved. Then you start adding spectators in, people who travel. So we're doing all that now. We're producing economic impact studies for each round, and we're giving them to local councils.
Is there a lot of potential there? So I do notice like any big event in any country, it's usually somewhat funded by the local government.
Yeah. You can't have an event, so put it this way, you can't have a World Championship event in Australia in a blue ribbon series without government funding. Costs are way too high. Just
because of the money?
Just the money.
Yeah.
Pure money.
Wow. What percentage is funded by that government?
Look, I think if you want to get some public documents, probably go and read Australian Grand Prix Corporation's annual report and find out how much they lose on their 2 events, which is tens of millions.
Wow.
But the economic benefit to Melbourne or Victoria is hundreds of millions.
And does the government make up that shortfall? That
Grand Prix Corp is an arm of the government.
Gotcha.
So,
sorry, I understand. So they're not a private promoter?
No, they're an arm of the government.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Formula One and MotoGP are run by Australian Grand Prix Corporation.
So I'll invest in an event that'll cost them a ton of money, but in return they'll get more people show up to the city and get it back into tourism.
So that's why the big events are, it's not possible for a club to run it. So you've either got to have people with a lot of financial backing to come in, and they would have to put their personal money on the line or get government backing. Most people who have been involved in the game won't do it without some government backing. And governments will back it if the economic climate works for them.
To improve it.
Australian Open is backed by Australian Open tennis is a massive event now. Massive funding comes from the Victorian government.
It's so funny just having the talk. Like it's from a competitor's point of view, it's you sort of just looking at the competition and the people and that's it. But then there's a whole economic system behind it that's basically is what's modelling everything. That most people would just be totally oblivious to and just think, why have they banned this, or why does this cost more, and this, that, and the other. And
they probably look at it a bit more. You look at even the cost of diesel now, and you'd be well aware in your experience that if you wanted to properly prep a track for what's called a motocross event, and not even a national, it doesn't matter, a nicely prepped track that you would like to ride on, there's a few days' work and a lot of diesel spent by, now the diesel's got to be paid for by somebody.
It's a sad reality, it's all going to be paid for somehow.
Right, and you're hoping that you can get enough volunteers at Clubland to give their time for free for the people to come and ride on it. Someone's got to pay for it.
Yep.